El Cap harder than Everest? How fast does it take to climb El Cap? Do I need big balls to climb big walls? These are questions that I'm asked on a weekly basis by friends, family and other climbers about what climbing El Cap is actually like. This video is an attempt to get them off my back. Back in the spring of 2016, I had my first taste of Yosemite. I was so hooked that I came back that same autumn and back once again in 2019. Yosemite is without a doubt the mecca of rock climbing on Earth, and El Capitan is the 900-meter granite big wall that dominates the valley unlike any other. Climbers dedicate their lives to climbing its hallowed walls in search of challenge, adventure and a life less ordinary. My time on El Cap taught me a lot about what it takes to climb big walls, but it's not something that's easily explained to those who've not experienced it for themselves. In this video, I'll be trying to answer the classic questions about climbing El Cap that I get asked most often. But before we start, a quick definition to some common key terms I'll be using. Free climbing. Any climbing when you're only using your hands and feet to hold on and a rope and gear to protect the fall. Aid climbing, when you use climbing gear itself to climb higher on the wall. And free solo, when you have no gear whatsoever to protect you from a fall, but you only rely on your hands and feet to climb higher and no gear as backup. And don't worry, if there's any odd words or terms we use throughout, we'll try and throw in some extra text boxes to help with understanding. On that note, time to talk about my favourite subject, El Capitan. No matter who you are, El Cap is a challenge to climb. It's a 900-meter granite big wall. It's no walk in the park. However, the relative difficulty of climbing it depends on a number of factors. The style of ascent, the route you take, and the speed of the ascent. The best place to start with this question is probably style, which as any climber will tell you, style means everything. But what do I mean by style? It's certainly not the way I dress, because I'd be winning every day otherwise. When climbing El Cap, style refers to whether you free climbed or aid climbed. Aid climbing involves using artificial gear to climb higher. It was the original style climbers used to climb El Capitan, such as on Warren Harding's 1958 ascent of the Nose, which at the time redefined the notion of what was possible for climbers. With aid climbing, the aim of the game is to get up the wall by almost any means, whereas with the more modern approach of free climbing, you can only use your hands and fingers to hold onto the rock, relying only on the gear to hold you in case of a fall. Both styles have their intricacies, but free climbing is without a doubt the more athletic approach, as it relies predominantly on the climber's physical prowess, whereas aid climbing is more a test of tactics and expert knowledge of the gear they have at their disposal. The route you take will also make a huge difference to how hard it is to climb. Probably the easiest way up El Cap is to aid climb the Nose. As an aid climb, it is relatively straightforward. It requires a good understanding of big wall climbing skills, but the actual aid climbing is relatively easy, as it is what we call clean aid, which means no hammering pitons is necessary, only the placing of cams in cracks. The skills for this are something anyone could learn at a single pitch crag, which is one reason why it is so popular. If you're free climbing, however, the easiest climb on El Capitan is Freerider, which Alex Honnold famously free soloed, and to climb this without using aid is actually still a pretty difficult thing to do for even a very, very experienced climber. The hardest pitch is given the difficulty rating of 513A or 7C+ in Europe. On top of this, there are also so many pitches that are tough in a variety of ways, such as thin cracks, laybacks, corners, slabs and bouldery sections that require some big guns to pull through. There's even off-widths, which are essentially super wide cracks you have to fit your whole body into. The bottom line is, to free climb El Cap, you need to have all the skills to be able to aid climb the easiest aid routes on El Cap, but also have the physical capacity to free climb the technical grade of 513 after days and days of climbing and exposure on one of the sheerest vertical rock faces on Earth. So to conclude, how hard is it to climb El Cap? Well, if you want to aid climb up the Nose, I'd say it's a very achievable objective for anyone who learns the right skills. However, to free climb El Cap will require a lot more time training and honing movement skills that you can't just learn overnight. Many non-climbers think that to climb El Cap requires superhuman abilities and nerves of steel, but in all honesty, it doesn't. To climb El Cap, the most important thing you need are the skills to keep you safe up there. These are skills such as rope work that keeps you and your partner anchored to the wall at all times, allows you to haul up a week's worth of food and water behind you with minimal effort, and having the capabilities to rescue yourself if anything goes wrong. To climb El Cap, your physical fitness is important, but the style will dictate in what way. Aid climbing is more about all-day body and mind endurance than being physically strong like a boulderer or sport climber. Free climbing El Cap is certainly physical in a more conventional manner and requires a higher level of all-day body endurance as well as strong fingers, shoulders and biceps to match. To climb El Cap, you need to be able to handle the exposure. It can get intense up there, hanging hundreds of meters off the deck with the wind beating you sideways, the sun burning you red and the rain drenching you at a hanging belay. It can be tough to overcome these, but exposure in the end is a state of mind, and I've developed ways over the years of dealing with this. If you'd like a video on some of these, then comment below. I'd be psyched to talk you through some of my methods. So to conclude, what does it take to climb El Cap? Well, to be honest, skills can be learned, muscles can be trained, and the mind is flexible. I've never met a healthy human that I thought couldn't climb El Cap if they were motivated. If El Cap is something that inspires you, then I implore you to set about learning the rope skills, read whichever books you can find on it, and practice climbing movement by getting out cragging as much as possible. Once again, knowing how long a climb on El Cap takes depends on the style, difficulty of route, and a lot on the climber's ability. Doing a hard route will generally take longer irrespective of the style. Often free climbing is a quicker way to climb, but it will take longer if it's hard and you keep falling off. If you're climbing on El Cap in big wall style with haul bags, portaledges and the works, then routes average between 3 and 7 days. However, some can take much longer when they're really hard. The average climber on the nose will spend 3 days on it, but some do it in a day and others in mere hours. The first time I climbed El Cap, we took everything in the kitchen sink up with us. We had water for over a week and food to last us as long. It ended up taking us 7 days to complete our free ascent of El Nino. And looking back, I often wonder if we'd taken half as much gear, whether we'd have done it in half the time. But when we're talking about how long El Cap takes to climb, we can't miss out talking about the speed records on El Cap. Speed climbing has a fiercely competitive history in Yosemite, and in particular on El Cap's premier climb, the nose. Climbing the nose in a day, or Naiad as it's called in the valley, has become a bit of a Yosemite tradition. To climb it in a day is hard, but not impossible for a pair of driven climbers. To climb it sub 10 hours is certainly not uncommon. To climb it sub 5 hours shows really impressive skill, but the world record currently stands at 1 hour, 58 minutes and 7 seconds by Alex Honnold and Tommy Caldwell, who claimed the first sub 2 hour ascent of the nose. So, the elephant in the room. How do climbers poop when climbing El Cap? This is honestly the most common question I get from people, and it's quite simple really. I don't think you need me to go into great details about the biology of it all, but generally I use several items. Poop bag with kitty litter in it, a plastic bottle, toilet paper, some antiseptic wipes, and a poop tube. Once you've done your business into the poop bag, you put that into what we call the poop tube, which is generally a PVC container that you lower down below your haul bags where it stays until the next adventurous poo. I will admit, going for a poo on big walls is the most annoying part of it. It's generally uncomfortable and, unlike using a toilet, takes a bit of prep. Also, you're never much further than 2 meters from your climbing partner, meaning you get used to the smell of each other's poo pretty quickly.
It's all original.
My family and non-climber friends all think climbing El Cap is the most dangerous thing ever and that I must have a screw loose for doing it. But I honestly think that's just from the outside looking in. I'd like to say first that in climbing, the aim of the game is risk assessing. It's something we do every day in our sport, as climbing is inherently risky and caution should always be taken when undertaking any climb. Because of this, I found that climbers are generally quite good at calculating and managing risks on a climb, which I think does a lot for keeping them safe up there. So, how dangerous is climbing El Cap? Well, some of the gnarly aid lines on El Cap are super dangerous, as they have pitches where falling off could mean death. I haven't done any of those. They are dangerous because the gear to protect you from a fall can be extremely poor. Sometimes even the belays themselves would be hard pressed to take a fall. Whereas climbs like the Nose and Freerider are relatively safe, many of the belays are bolted, which on granite means they could probably hold a bus. The gear is generally pretty bomber and there's plenty of traffic, meaning there's virtually no loose rock. But every time I go to climb El Cap, my mum and dad get scared because they hear the horror stories and think that could be me. The truth is that I take bigger risks every time I go bouldering. I felt more scared topping out the boulder Midnight Lightning in Camp 4 than on any pitch on El Cap, because I knew if I fell, I was hitting the ground. The dangers of climbing El Cap come when you start skipping steps in your processes that could result in mistakes. This happens when climbers speed up, such as when trying to break a speed record, or when doing things like simul climbing to try and link more pitches together. There are a few horror stories in recent years of climbers attempting to climb fast, which has resulted in disastrous results. For me, climbing fast should never get to the point that you start to make mistakes. I remember Alex Honnold put it very well, that he wasn't actually climbing faster than normal, just climbing fast by virtue of not stopping. This allowed him to be in total control of his situation and meant he was less likely to make mistakes. So how dangerous is climbing El Cap? It's so subjective and not something I could easily put a number to. But as I said before, climbers try and mitigate the risks as much as possible, and in doing so make the whole experience a lot safer. I know that personally I feel there is more objective risk driving my car on the motorway than climbing El Cap. There's a hell of a lot of more crazy drivers out there than crazy climbers. So if this video has wet your whistle on climbing big walls, or you're inspired to one day climb El Cap, then here's a few resources for you to check out. Online climbing websites like Rock and Ice and ukclimbing.com have a bunch of great skills-based articles, and even some dedicated to climbing classic big wall routes like the Nose. Andy Kirkpatrick's latest book, called Higher Education, is in my opinion one of the best books dedicated to the art of big walling, and is literally something for everyone, whether you're just starting out or a seasoned big wall veteran. Lastly, nothing teaches you better like experience. Once you've learned the theory, go out and put it into practice at your local single pitch crags. Always make sure to back yourself up in case you make a mistake, but better you make mistakes 7 meters off the ground than 700. Thanks again for watching, guys, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and ding that wee bell for notifications when our next video is out.
Okay, right. What I want you to do is just sit there and imagine that your husband alone in the house and you're sitting there looking through the window waiting on his return.
Video.
No.
Should be.
Yeah, I am.